I never thought that my journey through infertility would lead to uncovering the most devastating betrayal of my life. I'm 28 years old, and what I'm about to tell you will make you question everything you think you know about trust, family, and the lengths people will go to maintain their lies. I was with my ex-husband David for about 6 years total, married for 4 of those. From the very beginning, we both wanted children desperately. We tried for a baby for almost 3 years, tracking ovulation cycles, visiting fertility specialists, undergoing countless tests that drained our bank account and our spirits. Every negative pregnancy test felt like a knife to my heart, and I began to believe that I was broken, that something fundamental was wrong with me as a woman. The fertility doctors couldn't find anything definitively wrong with either of us, which somehow made it worse. At least if there had been a clear diagnosis, we could have focused our energy on treating it. Instead, we existed in this liminal space of unexplained infertility, where hope and despair battled each other every single month. About 4 years into our marriage, David started having serious problems at work. He was an accountant at a mid-sized firm, and they were going through layoffs. The stress was eating him alive. He'd come home exhausted, barely speaking to me, spending hours staring at his laptop or scrolling mindlessly through his phone. I tried to be supportive, cooking his favorite meals, suggesting we take walks together, even proposing we take a weekend trip to reconnect. Nothing seemed to help. Then came the confession that shattered my world. It was a Tuesday evening in March. David came home looking like he'd seen a ghost, his face pale and his hands shaking. He sat me down on our couch, the same couch where we'd cuddled during countless movie nights, where we'd planned our future children's names, and told me he had something to confess. "I slept with Jessica," he said, referring to his coworker. "It happened last month. I was so stressed out work, and she was there, and I made a terrible mistake. I'm so sorry, Sarah. It meant nothing. It was just stress relief." Stress relief, as if my husband's infidelity was equivalent to taking an aspirin for a headache. I was devastated, but I wasn't prepared for what came next. A week later, David asked me to meet him and Jessica at a coffee shop downtown. I thought maybe she wanted to apologize, or perhaps they wanted to discuss how to handle the situation at their workplace. I had no idea I was walking into an ambush. I sat across from me in that stale coffee shop, David looking guilty and Jessica looking triumphant. That's the only way I can describe her expression. She had this glow about her, this satisfied smile that made my stomach churn. "We need to tell you something," Jessica said, placing her hand protectively over her still flat stomach. "I'm pregnant. We're going to have a baby." The words hit me like a physical blow. Here I was, struggling with infertility for years. And this woman, this other woman, had gotten pregnant from a single encounter with my husband. The cruel irony was almost unbearable. I should have left then. I should have packed my bags and walked away with whatever dignity I had left. Instead, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I stayed. I was an idiot back then, completely broken down by years of fertility struggles and a marriage that had slowly been suffocating me. I felt like I should forgive David because I truly believed he loved me. And more pathetically, I thought I had no one else. My parents had died in a car accident when I was 22. And I'd never been close to my extended family. David's family had become my family, and I was terrified of losing them too. The pregnancy progressed, and Jessica gave birth to a beautiful baby girl they named Emma. David was over the moon, finally becoming the father he'd always dreamed of being. His family, my family, was absolutely smitten with their first grandchild. Emma became the apple of everyone's eye, and suddenly, our family dynamics shifted in ways I never could have anticipated. Jessica became a frequent presence in our lives. David's parents insisted that they had to include the mother of their grandchild in everything. Family dinners, holiday celebrations, birthday parties. Jessica was always there with little Emma. She wormed her way into every family photo, every precious memory, slowly but surely replacing me as the important woman in David's life. What made it infinitely worse was that I could see Jessica had feelings for David. She would find excuses to touch his arm when she talked to him, lean in close when showing him pictures of Emma on her phone, and make comments about what a wonderful father he was. She'd bring up inside jokes from their work, memories I wasn't part of, creating this intimate bubble that excluded me entirely. The worst part was how naturally David responded to her attention. I watched my husband light up around Jessica in ways he hadn't with me in years. When she laughed at his jokes, he seemed genuinely happy. When she asked for his advice about Emma, he beamed with pride. When she needed help with something at her apartment, he'd rush over without hesitation. Meanwhile, I felt like a ghost in my own life. People constantly mistook Jessica for David's wife when we were out together. At Emma's first birthday party, held at David's parents' house, his mother actually asked me to take a photo of the family: David, Jessica, Emma, and David's parents. I wasn't included in the shot. That moment was my breaking point. Standing there with that camera in my hands, looking at this picture-perfect family that had formed around my husband and his mistress, I realized I had become the other woman in my own marriage. I deserved so much more than this humiliating existence. I filed for divorce 3 months later. It was the hardest decision I'd ever made, but also the most liberating. David was shocked. He genuinely seemed to believe we could continue this twisted arrangement indefinitely, with me playing the role of the understanding wife while he played happy family with Jessica and Emma. The divorce process was brutal. David's family, who had treated me like their own daughter for years, suddenly turned cold. They blamed me for breaking up their son's chance at happiness, for depriving Emma of a stable 2-parent home. The irony of their accusations wasn't lost on me. They were acting like I was the one who had destroyed the marriage, not David's affair. But leaving turned out to be the best decision I ever made. Within 6 months, I threw myself into my work and earned a promotion I'd been gunning for. More importantly, I met Marcus at a work conference in Seattle. He was kind, funny, and most importantly, he was available. No secret families, no complicated baggage, just a genuine man looking for genuine love. Marcus and I fell hard and fast. 3 months into our relationship, I discovered something that would change everything. I was pregnant. I stared at that positive pregnancy test for 20 minutes, unable to believe what I was seeing. After years of trying with David, after countless fertility treatments and specialists telling us there was no clear reason for our struggles, I had gotten pregnant naturally with Marcus, after just 3 months of dating. A horrible thought began to creep into my mind. What if the problem had never been me? What if David was the one with fertility issues? What if Jessica's pregnancy was the result of her affair with someone else entirely? I pushed these thoughts away. It wasn't my business anymore. David had made his choices, and I had made mine. I focused on my own happiness, my own growing family. Marcus was absolutely ecstatic about the pregnancy. He'd wanted children his whole life. And seeing his joy made me realize how different real love felt from the hollow shell my marriage had become. When our daughter Lily was born, healthy, perfect, beautiful, Marcus posted about it on Facebook, tagging me in photos of our little family. I had forgotten that I was still Facebook friends with David's sister, Michelle. She saw Marcus's post and called me immediately. "Sarah, I'm so happy for you, but I'm also confused," she said. "You got pregnant so easily with Marcus. Have you considered that maybe the fertility problems in your marriage weren't because of you?" Her words confirmed what I'd been suspecting but was too afraid to voice. Michelle convinced David to take a paternity test, something that apparently had never occurred to anyone in all these years. The results were devastating. Emma wasn't David's daughter. She never had been. The truth came out in pieces, like a puzzle revealing a picture you never wanted to see. Jessica had been dating another man, someone David's family considered terrible, around the same time she slept with David. When she discovered she was pregnant, she didn't know who the father was. But David was stable, kind, and clearly smitten with her. The other man was unreliable, probably wouldn't stick around to raise a child. So Jessica made a calculated decision. She let David believe he was the father, knowing he would step up and provide for her and the baby. She watched him fall in love with a child that wasn't his. She allowed his entire family to bond with Emma, to build their lives around this little girl who shared none of their DNA. For 4 years, Jessica maintained this lie while David paid child support. While his parents spoiled their granddaughter, while I was slowly pushed out of the family to make room for the real parents. When David found out the truth, he was destroyed. He called me, sobbing, saying he was sorry, that he'd realized he had prioritized people who were never really family over me. He blamed me for not telling him about my pregnancy with Lily sooner, as if I had somehow been obligated to prove his infertility to him. "If you had just told me you were pregnant, I would have known," he said. "I wouldn't have spent 4 years raising another man's child." His words made me furious. Even in his pain, he was trying to make this somehow my responsibility. I had no obligation to update my ex-husband on my reproductive status. I had moved on, built a new life, found real love and real family. But I also felt genuinely sorry for Emma. This innocent 4-year-old had lost the only father she'd ever known, along with grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins who had loved her unconditionally. Through no fault of her own, her entire world had collapsed. David told me he felt morally obligated to maintain some relationship with Emma, to see her once a month, even though he wouldn't contribute financially anymore. Jessica could support the child on her own, and her biological father, once the paternity was confirmed, had agreed to start paying child support. The whole situation left me with complex emotions I'm still processing. I'm angry at Jessica for her manipulation, for the way she inserted herself into my marriage and ultimately destroyed it. I'm angry at David for his weakness, for choosing infidelity over working on our problems, for blaming me for consequences on his own actions. But I'm also grateful. If David hadn't cheated, if I had never discovered the truth about Emma's parentage, I might still be trapped in that loveless marriage. I might never have met Marcus, never had Lily, never experienced what real partnership actually feels like. David's family has cut contact with me entirely now. They're embarrassed about how they treated me, but instead of apologizing, they've chosen to pretend I never existed. It hurts because they were my family for 6 years, but I understand that my presence reminds them of their own poor judgment. The last I heard, Jessica was dating Emma's biological father, trying to create the family she should have pursued from the beginning. David was in therapy, trying to process the betrayal and his complicated feelings about Emma. His parents were struggling with the loss of their granddaughter and the realization that they had pushed away their daughters-in-law for a woman who had been lying to them all along. As for me, I'm focused on my real family now. Marcus and I are talking about getting married, and Lily is the light of our lives. Sometimes I look at my daughter and think about all the pain that led me to this moment, the failed fertility treatments, the infidelity, the divorce, the years of feeling broken and inadequate. But every struggle was worth it to get here, to this life where I'm truly loved and valued, where I don't have to compete for my place in my own family. The question that haunts me sometimes, though, is this. Should I have said something sooner about my suspicions regarding David's fertility? Should I have pushed for more answers during our marriage, or was I right to focus on moving forward with my own life? And if you discovered that your ex-spouse had spent years raising a child that wasn't theirs while you were blamed for fertility issues, would you feel obligated to intervene, or would you let them figure it out on their own? What would you do?